Hi everybody, it's Andre Regan from MS Solutions Training and thank you for joining me today. So what is MS Solutions Training, you probably ask? Well, it's a collective of three people, of which I'm one, and we provide consultancy, coaching and training to businesses in crisis management, business continuity and resilience. Last year we became a qualification centre for Highfield, who, as many of you will know, are a leading awarding body in the UK for vocational qualifications. We have a crisis management course registered and certificated by them, and that's where today's information is taken from. But who is Andre Regan, you may ask? Well, I was a police officer in the Metropolitan Police for 30 years. If you look behind me, there's a little clue for those who are a bit more observant. I was a senior civil service investigator once I retired from the police. And for the last 5 years, I've been a crisis management and business continuity coach consultant with a very good firm. And also, as I said, more recently with MS Solutions Training as part of that collective. So we're going to talk about information in a crisis. So we all deal with information on a daily basis, right? And businesses are really good at using information so they can deliver the best products, services, processes, whatever they do for their customers, clients, partners, and other stakeholders. But let's assume that something's taken place, a disruptive event has taken place, and they can't deal with the information in that tried and tested way that suits them and suits what they're about. So let's take a look in stages. Let's have a deeper dive on what we all probably take for granted on a daily basis. So gathering information. Information can be gathered from a variety of different sources. And the following are just examples. Social media, everyone on their phone. Team meetings. Consultation with internal or external stakeholders. The emergency services, whichever service is required at that time. The experience of yourself, the experience of others around you. Observations by yourself, your team, other people, other witnesses. Documents and plans, because you've thought about these things in advance. Informal conversations, off-record conversations. We've heard that expression, haven't we? Rumours. These are all just touch points of examples of where we might get information from. So we've got information from a variety of different sources, some of which you've just seen, some of which you can think are other things that you would utilise. So now we need to check the quality of that information. So we need to validate or verify the information before we think of making any changes to our plan or formulating those plans based on that information. And the crisis team, the team that's going to be responding to this disruptive event and taking control of it, they should be asking, where's the information come from, how it was received and by whom? Because as we know, messaging can break down at the various points between the sender and the receiver. So a good example of validated information might be that the emergency services are telling you that there's a full evacuation of a site is required. They are not going to do that lightly. They come from a position of authority, and you'd like to hope of verified information of which they base that decision on. Take the other side of the coin, where you've got unvalidated information that's being published on social media by an unknown person who says the same thing. But would you necessarily take action? Or you may well take action, but you may want to carry out further investigation first. In other words, you won't just take it as sacrosanct, take it as read. You want to do your background checks or your validation checks first. So really, we're looking at, is the information, is it accurate? Is it sufficient for your purpose? Is it current? Information can change. Is it relevant? Is it relevant to what you want? So is it accurate, sufficient, current, and relevant? So let's take a look at this picture here. Okay, so what words might we use to describe this picture? And are the words that we choose, are they fact or are they opinion? Because if they're fact, it's what is almost verified information. This person is a clown, they got a painted face, they're colourful, they're smiling. However, an opinion is how we interpret our subjective view on this picture. This person's funny, they've got weird hair, they're scary, they're happy. So we put our interpretation on it. So again, back to we need to have verified information. We need to know facts, not necessarily people's opinions. There might be a time and place for an opinion, maybe from an expert or a subject matter lead. But apart from that, we are looking at establishing facts. So we've looked at obtaining information. We've looked at the quality of that information. Now, typically, we're looking at how we're going to share the information and how we go about that. Now, as we said before, messages can be diluted, changed, all sorts of things between the encoder and the message receiver or the sender. So by way of an example, it's a very famous case. If you start by saying, send reinforcements, we are going to advance. If you start at one end of a room and people whisper into each other's ears, by the end of the line, they won't be saying, send reinforcements, we are going to advance. They might be saying, send 3 and 4pence, we are going to a dance, which is completely different to the message that you started out with. So you need to be aware of making sure the message retains its integrity. And then let's assume it does. So is it confidential information? So this typically would be shared at a senior level, senior management, who would have access to that. Is it restricted? So maybe most employees have access to that information, certainly not in the outside world. Internal, so all employees may have access. Or is it public information where everybody has access to that information? It's public knowledge. So when we consider information in a crisis, why is this different? Well, it's a major issue during a crisis for a number of reasons, because often there is not enough information on which to base our thoughts, our decisions, our actions. So there's not enough information, we call it a vacuum. On the flip side, sometimes we have too much information. Certainly in the digital age, with communication being so readily available to so many people, we can be overloaded with information. So it's a matter of sorting the wheat from the chaff. And often we get a lot of information that is contradictory. And all that information has to be assessed, judged on its veracity, its relevance, and where it fits in the overall picture. And notwithstanding what we said earlier about quality of information, of course. So the function of the crisis team, the team dealing with this disruptive event, is to sort out this information. And not just sort it out, but then pass it on in a structured manner to those who need it. These could be those who are in charge, those who are practitioners who need to action the information requirement, whatever it might be. So this will be a critical step in an effective crisis management framework. Because the quicker that the team can achieve this, the less time is spent in that vacuum that we spoke about, that information vacuum. So consequently, they will gain control quicker and they become more resilient as a result. So working within that information vacuum, we're going to look at the information model now. And more significantly, having explained it, you'll see the importance of obtaining not just information, but verified information, as we said earlier, as soon as you can. Hi there. So here you can see the information model with decisions mapped against time. So we have some major disruption that takes place. And what happens is we are required to make a lot of decisions in a short space of time, hence the steepness of this curve. But at the same time, we have limited information or limited verified information. And as time goes on, we get more and more verified information. So we reach a point where these two cross over. That is the decision making point where we are making decisions based upon uh, sufficient verified information. Because up until that point, we are in what is known as an information vacuum. In other words, we are possibly second guessing or making decisions based upon insufficient information because we have to. But what we want to do is the quicker we can verify information, the earlier we can reach that decision making point. So if we can move that line, that verified information line to the left, in other words, get our information quicker, verify it quicker, then it reduces that vacuum, that information vacuum. And the rule of thumb is working out what do I know, what do I want to know, and how will I get that information. That's a little bit better. It's getting a little bit dark in here. Right. So, how do we validate or verify the information? So, we can look at three things: the source, the accuracy, and then the questions we're asking around it. So, the source, let's consider what the source of the information is. Could it be malicious? How genuine does it appear? Why did it come in when it did? Has it proved reliable in the past? Why would that source pass that information now? Is this suspicious? Is it not? Is it what you'd expect? And accuracy. How accurate is the information? And in asking that question, what more would you want to know or you would need to know? And using the correct context, accurate information will greatly assist in threat assessment, situational awareness, and planning, which we'll come on to shortly. And in questions, you've got to ask the right questions to validate or verify the information. And typically, we would use the 5 W's: who, what, where, when, and why. I think some people call it Rudyard Kipling's best friends. I think that there's a reference historically around those. But who, what, where, when, and why. And by asking the right questions, it's essential to obtaining the best information so that you can use that in your strategic plan, your action plans, your tactical plans. So I mentioned situational awareness. So what is it? Well, it's the ability to identify, process, and comprehend the key components, the critical elements of that information. In other words, it's the context. So you look at the context of the information you're receiving. So what's changed? What is happening? What is changing? What now? And what might happen? So you're looking back, present, and future. You're trying to stay focused. You don't want to be sidelined, but you don't want to be tunnel visioned either. Because that bit of information now that may not be relevant right this second may become relevant a little bit later on when you get more information or different information. So also I mentioned an expression, the threat assessment. So understanding the impact of the information. So whenever you get any information at all, you should be vulgarly asking yourself, so what? So what? Because by asking that question, you're determining the impact of the information on the following things. So you're looking at the impact on people, your infrastructure, your operations, your information technology, and your reputation. So let's take a couple of these at a time. Right, so people. The information you get, whatever it is, when you say so what, are lives at risk? Is this a life safety issue? Is there an impact on the safety of your staff, your customers, visitors, local community? So people, infrastructure, assets, the physical piece. So are these infrastructure, so is your infrastructure, your physical assets at risk? What can be done to mitigate those risks or the risk? And what more do I need to know to make that determination? Your operations. Does this event impact the business critical activities? So a business will undertake a huge amount of different activities. However, there are certain ones which, if you lose the capability to do those particular things, you start to lose your business. So, does the event impact your customers? Does it have a significant financial impact at all? UIT, are IT services disrupted? We know how important IT is in this new age, this new world. But is there information? Is there an information security issue? What services, processes, or products does your IT control? And and to what extent? How reliant on it is that particular thing? And your reputation. Does the event impact on your reputation, as in your organisation? What is it likely to say or suggest about you? What is the outside world saying about your company as a result of what's taken place? And what effect will that have on the business? For those that are old enough, if you remember Ratner's Jewellers many, many years ago, which was a high street jewellers, sort of pitched itself at the cheaper end of the market. Anyway, the owner of the company, Mr. Ratner, came on a program and basically rubbished his products, saying they were cheap and nasty or something to that effect. But of course there was a place for that, for wearing that type of product. Within, I think, a year, maybe a little bit more, that business was no longer, because that dictated what people then thought about that business. If people are saying things about your business as a result of what has happened, do you have a response prepared? And who is best placed to actually give that response? So again, we come back to ask yourself, so what? What does it mean? What does it matter? And that's every time you get a new bit of information. And it could be that the information, as a result of you just saying, so what, you park it. It's parked, it's acknowledged, it's there. Because, as I said, it may come into play later on. And again, what effect does it have on your planning? So if you think about a good plan, you would have planned how you're going to gather the information that you might need. You're going to plan who is going to look at that information and test its quality, test its usefulness, and then pass it to whoever might need that information. So you might even set out a communication chain of what your expectation might be. And in all of this, again, it's making sure that everyone is saying the right things in terms of situational awareness, threat assessment. How does this information sit now? So what? What does it mean? And so on and so forth. So that planning process can actually take place within a plan. You could actually you could do it by exercising and practicing. So typically within MS Solutions training, we will run exercises with businesses. And what we would do, we'll put people into plausible scenario situations, break them into teams, and then let them deal with it and coach them through it. And by doing so, at the end of the day, we do that not because we're telling them how to run their business, because they know best how to run their business. But what we're doing is challenging the assumptions they might be making, testing the veracity of their process so that they can actually improve that process themselves. Well, thank you everyone for listening. It's been about 15 minutes or so thank you very much for staying with us. As we said from the outset, this is information that's come from a crisis management course that we in MS Solutions training run through Highfield. So please get in touch with us. If you like this short presentation, please click the like button. And if you can subscribe, please do. We're just starting out this journey now on putting this type of information package together. We're also trying to supplement it with small micro lessons, which can be accessed probably through LinkedIn or other means if you want to contact us. So again, please keep in touch. But again, thank you very much for giving up your time and listening to what I had to say. Thank you very much.